Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. In this episode, this video from Matrix Wisdom reports multiple accounts from various researchers, all pointing to inner Earth realm realities. Next, Ben Davidson at SpaceWeatherNews covers current conditions, including the latest magnetic declination map. Due to the ongoing pole shifting, the Southern Atlantic anomaly, along with the US, saw the biggest drop in magnetic field protection. Then, Scanner Guy 1968 captured another evening of extraordinary craft in the sky a few nights ago, so that you can continue to discern the difference between star-like satellite streams, shooting stars, and other interstellar conveyances within our view. And finally, the lost continent of Mu and Lemuria are not the same. During the course of Earth's journey, her land masses were quite different than they are today. This source describes the origins of Lemuria and Mu, with multiple researchers sharing their physical location perspectives that resonate with me. This should help further connect the dots between the other ancient civilizations like the Maya and Lemuria.
Legend has it that the population of Agartha Shambhala consists of people from various civilizations that lived on Earth in different epochs. This would mean they possess either the secret of immortality or extreme longevity. Perhaps this is where Gilgamesh went in his search for immortality. He who saw the deep, to whom all things were known. He was wise. He saw mysteries and knew secret things. He brought us a tale of the days before the flood. He went on a long journey, was weary, worn out with labor. Returning, he rested. He engraved on a stone the whole story. The inhabitants of the subterranean kingdom are said to operate extraordinary devices and mechanisms unknown to our civilization, which we might perceive as UFOs. Of course, these are merely hypotheses and assumptions. Nevertheless, Admiral Byrd noted extraordinary flying machines during this venture into an unknown land over the poles. Nicholas Roerich recalls a peculiar incident in Altai Himalaya whilst searching for Agartha. On August 5, 1929, something remarkable happened. We were in our camp in the Kukunoor district, which was not far from the Humboldt chain. In the morning, about 9:30, some of our caravaneers noticed a remarkably big black eagle flying over us, he said, recounting the initial observation that drew their attention skyward. At this same moment, another of our caravaneers remarked, "There is something far above the bird." Roerich added, "We all saw, in a direction from north to south, something big and shiny reflecting the sun, like a huge oval moving at great speed." He explained, "Crossing our camp, the thing changed in its direction from south to southwest, and we saw how it disappeared in the intense blue sky." He continued, narrating the swift movement of the unidentified object. "We even had time to take our field glasses and saw quite distinctly an oval form with a shiny surface, one side of which was brilliant from the sun," he concluded, detailing their clear observation of the mysterious phenomenon. The network of underground tunnels appears to be not thousands, but millions of years old, with dimensions so vast they seem to have been constructed by giants rather than humans. In Ireland, there is a belief that the Druids, who once inhabited the land, descended underground and still live there beneath the hills. In Ecuador, a system of subterranean passages and ventilation shafts of enormous length was found. In the Karakoram region, local residents claim that vast underground chambers stretch for many kilometers beneath the surface. In his conclusions on the hollow earth, Raymond Bernard writes, "All cities in the Agartha network are physical and are of the light, meaning that they are in the tradition of the great mystery schools of the surface, honoring such beings as Jesus, Sananda, Buddha, Isis, and Osiris. All of the ascended masters that we of the surface know and love, in addition to spiritual teachers of their own long-standing heritage." Bernard emphasizes the spiritual and cultural richness of these subterranean cities, tying them to ancient wisdom traditions. Why did they choose to live underground? he asks, drawing attention to the reasons behind their decision to withdraw beneath the surface. Consider the magnitude of the geological Earth changes that have swept the surface over the past 100,000 years, he continues, pointing to catastrophic events that may have necessitated their retreat. He further explains, consider the lengthy Atlantean-Lemurian War and the power of thermonuclear weaponry that eventually sank and destroyed these two highly advanced civilizations. According to Bernard, the destructive forces unleashed during this conflict were devastating, leaving a lasting mark on the Earth. The Sahara, the Gobi, the Australian outback, and the deserts of the US are but a few examples of the devastation that resulted. Bernard notes using these desolate regions as evidence of the catastrophic changes wrought on the planet's surface. The sub-cities were created as refuges for the people and as safe havens for sacred records, teachings, and technologies that were cherished by these ancient cultures, he concludes, suggesting that these underground networks were both practical sanctuaries and repositories of knowledge from lost civilizations.
Good morning, observers. Today we've got some important new maps to cover. We're going to hit space weather, seismicity, 2 interesting studies from deep space, and then we're going to close with several new global magnetic field maps from the brand new 2025 World Report on our magnetosphere. But we're starting with the last 24 hours on our star, and we find things were mostly quiet. Solar flaring is low, solar wind is moderate intensity. Big coronal hole there, obviously. Couple small filaments released, but nothing aimed our way. Let's bring a bit of focus to that coronal hole. Its enhanced solar wind is expected to arrive at Earth either January 31st or February 1st. Minor geomagnetic storm is forecast. Moderate auroral production is expected. Sunspots are returning. Yesterday we came close to a blank disk, but the next set of umbral cores turned into view. Eyes on the left side, the incoming limb for flaring activity today. And then we go from flaring to earthquakes, where we're focused on the Ethiopian swarm with a bit of good news. After a flurry of over 190 earthquakes in 27 days, we've had only one in the last 4. Hopefully the East African rift is settling back down now. Double dose of space news up next. First, Chandra has helped discover how the massive cosmic jets of galactic cores can shock, collimate, and recycle galactic material. This is official confirmation of the inflow-outflow paradigm of galactic evolution. Up next, we find that a supremely powerful explosion created absolutely 0 radio waves. It's not supposed to be anywhere close to possible, like a nuclear bomb with no visible light. They think it may be a brand new, undiscovered kind of explosion in space. And finally, folks, here's the new full magnetic declination map. North Pole top right, still sliding towards Siberia. South Pole just below Australia there, heading to the north-northwest. Follow the green lines from those magnetic poles, the null lines, and they meet at Sumatra, exactly where we've discussed them being on track to meet. Up next, look at the total field intensity. We have peaks near the magnetic poles, and on the opposite side of the Earth, the South Atlantic anomaly, we have the weakest point. But it was not the portion of Earth that weakened most over the last 5 years. While the South Atlantic anomaly and the South Pacific both dropped, the United States actually saw the biggest drop in magnetic field protection. Happens to be along the green line, the 0 line cutting through the country here too.
The surface of our planet consists of 6 continents. But what existed 4 to 5 million years ago? There was an enormous continent that included Australia, part of Asia, and southern Africa. In 1850, English zoologist Philip Sclater proposed naming this continent Lemuria after the strange creatures called lemurs that inhabited it. In a brief essay titled Mammals of Madagascar, Slater wrote, "The anomalies of the mammal fauna of Madagascar can best be explained by supposing that anterior to the existence of Africa in its present shape, a large continent occupied parts of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. This hypothetical landmass, he suggests, stretched out towards what is now America to the west, and to India and its islands on the east." Slater outlined a geological scenario in which fragments of the original landmass integrated into modern continents. This continent was broken up into islands, of which some have become amalgamated with the present continent of Africa, and some possibly with what is now Asia. And that in Madagascar and the Mascarene Islands we have existing relics of this great continent, he asserts, identifying these locations as remnants of the lost land. I should propose the name Lemuria, Slater concludes. In the mid-19th century, natural scientists tried to explain why certain plant species appeared so similar in regions separated by vast bodies of water. There is a hypothesis that a massive landmass, now submerged under water, once connected these regions. Another scientist, William T. Blanford, wrote, "Paleontology, physical geography, and observations of the distribution of fungi and fauna point to an ancient connection between Africa, India, and the oceanic archipelagos. This primeval landmass, known as Lemuria," he continues, "must have existed during the early periods of the Earth, until the end of the Miocene epoch." Blanford concluded, "Africa and the Indian Peninsula are remnants of this continent." It also provided clairvoyant descriptions of human beings at that time, Chin continues. These beings were said to be 12 to 15 feet high, with dark skin, long lower jaw, flattened face, small but piercing eyes that are far apart, and which could see sideways. Chin adds that these beings were described as having an eye at the back of the head, further emphasizing the extraordinary and otherworldly traits ascribed to the inhabitants of Lemuria. The philosopher Rudolf Steiner asserted that such historical preservation in the universe, the Akashic records, also identifies the Lemurians as precursors to humans. Rudolf Steiner, in The Lemurian Race, Cosmic Forces, writes, "What was cultivated there was not really a religion, it was divine wisdom and art. Man felt that what was given to him, there was a direct gift from the spiritual universal forces." He continues, "When he received this gift, he considered himself a servant of these universal forces." Legends of sunken continents were known to all cultures of the Pacific Basin. Hawaiian priests claimed that vast land masses once connected their islands to New Zealand. Geographical studies have confirmed that several islands in the Pacific Ocean did indeed submerge during ancient epochs. In 1914, German geologist Alfred Wegener proposed the theory of primeval landmasses. According to this theory, a single continent on Earth once existed, called Pangaea. During the Paleozoic era, Pangaea split into 2 parts, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. These 2 giant landmasses gradually broke apart into smaller sections. Laurasia formed North America, the Atlantic, and Europe, while Gondwana became the continent of Mu. South America, Africa, Australia, Antarctica, India, and Lemuria. Most of the modern continents were underwater at that time, and now unknown continents and large islands, Lemuria in the Indian Ocean, Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean, and Mu in the Pacific, became fertile grounds for emerging life. As is known, Earth's continents are always on the move, continuously drifting together before breaking apart in a never-ending cycle. In the future, the outlines of Earth's surface may change significantly. In 1870, Polish researcher Augustin de Zarzemski reported that a Tibetan monk showed him ancient tablets mentioning the continent of Mu. This continent received its strange name, Mu, from the Maya peoples of Central America, who lived on the Yucatan Peninsula. 120 years ago, Robert Stell was prospecting with 2 other Americans when they encountered Mayas in southern Mexico. Stella writes, "Eventually, I came across one old Maya priest who took an interest in me and seemed willing to share ancient knowledge. Asking that I not discuss what he learned with any local Mexicans," Stell continues, "the old man told me there had once been a great civilization in the now jungle-covered land. By using stones to represent 1000s or 1000, Stell notes, he conveyed the time as 46,000 years since the first Mayas, then called Mayans, had come to their country as a great army from the motherland of Lemuria." This account suggests a profound connection between Mayan traditions and the broader legend of Lemuria. Most sources claim Lemurians were living in an idyllic paradise, largely agrarian with lush forests and an abundance of flowers and fruit trees. Stevens describes a utopian vision of Lemurian society, emphasizing its harmonious relationship with nature. Stevens portrays Lemuria as a peaceful civilization, guided by collaborative and nurturing values. He notes, "Feminine principles of sharing, cooperation, and creativity produced a society virtually free of crime, strife, and warfare. Lemurians were vegetarians and lived in harmony with nature and other creatures. Their lifestyle was deeply integrated with the natural world," he notes. "They had highly developed psychic and telepathic senses, which were applied in practical endeavors such as horticulture," Stevens adds, suggesting that Lemurians utilized advanced mental abilities in their daily lives. People believed in mind over matter and were adept at manifestation and other reality-creating techniques.